Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. In today's episode, we're going to talk about fast action versus intentional slow steps, because I believe that there are times in our lives and in our businesses when we need both. So you'll be able to apply today's stories to your own business and marketing and get a better understanding of when to move at lightning speed and maybe when to pause. Hi, and welcome back to the Content with Character podcast. I have some fun stuff in store for you today and also a minor horror story. Now, don't worry, it has a mostly happy ending. It's not really a horror story. It's a business horror story, if you will. And, just day in the life, that kind of thing. But I think it'll end up being really inspiring, and it is what sparked the topic of today's episode. So, before we get into that, let's start with the good news and the fun stuff. Okay, who am I kidding? It's all fun stuff. But let's announce the winner of the Content with Character review contest. The winner is, drumroll please, it is Shopgirl74, who wrote a beautiful review. And her review says, one of the best marketing podcasts out there. Emily does an amazing job getting you to think outside the box when it comes to your content and inspires you to let your own voice guide you rather than following what everyone else is doing. Her enthusiasm is contagious and keeps you engaged as you listen to each episode. If you're a solopreneur or small business owner and looking to market your business in a way that feels more you, I can't recommend this podcast enough. Thank you so much, Shopgirl74. I reached out and know who it is, and I will be sending Miss Kim a personalized gift in the old snail mail. And if you didn't win this time, please do not let that stop you from writing a review. I plan to do more contests and also just like more interactive stuff with the podcast in the future. So stay tuned for that. And big thank you to all of you for listening, all of you who have written reviews. And I love reading and hearing as you share with me what you love about the episodes. So if this is your first time here, hello, welcome. I hope you will be so inclined to stick around with us. I'm Emily Aborn. I'm a content copywriter, podcast host of this podcast, and podcast host of the She Built This podcast. And I am a human being on a mission to make the world a better place, one idea at a time. I mean, my ideas are not like that life-altering, but I just thought I would be dramatic and add that into today's intro. But it is true. I really do live my life to try to make the world a better place through how I live. Okay, anyway, enough of that philosophical stuff. Let's get into where we're going today. You've been hearing me chat a lot about social media and my love-hate relationship with it, as well as, what I've been hearing from other people about their love-hate relationship with social media. So I created, of course, in addition to the 3 ways to market yourself off social media that I shared last week in last week's episode, I also created an entire blog that walks you through 11 ways to market yourself off social media. And yes, I said 11. That will be in the show notes. Those are including, but not limited to, networking, collaborating, speaking, and more. And I kind of go into each and every single one. You know what else I also discovered while I was creating this blog? I really seem to be able to come up with like 11 things a lot. It's a very random number. I also had like 11 ideas to spark creativity in one of my episodes. Anyway, that was a total tangent, neither here nor there, but apparently 11 is my magical number. So if you want in on those 11 ways to market yourself off social media, just check out the blog. It's, of course, you can find everything on my website all of the time, emilyaborn.com, but it's also, I put this one specifically in the show notes for you. One of the ways on my list of 11, of course, this is going to come as no surprise, is email. And if you stick around here long enough, you will hear me talk a lot about email and how much I love email. Here's why. I love that it helps you to cultivate relationships. I love that it really lets you to kind of like express a little bit more in depth on things. You can add value to people right in their inbox. And there is something about your inbox. Like you get to consume it and read it kind of on your own time with a little bit more, I would say, concentrated attention, because you're not like scrolling. You're typically like I subscribe to things that I actually want to sit down and make time to read. The other thing I actually love about email is this ability to share. Like you just get this little bit of a leg room, I guess, when it comes to long form content. And that also allows you to expand some of the details in your stories or tell things in a different way. I love that it's long form. So then you can break it down into shorter form content in other ways. And I also love that it's kind of like a little hub, right? Like you could give somebody like 6 resources in one email. They might file that email away or save it, and then they can easily go back into, and I do this, I find myself doing this all the time. Like, what did that email say? What was that link? What was that podcast? You can give them those resources where then they can open that email back up, click it, keep track of it, and find it. It's like you're like creating like mini little catalogs with every email you send. It's very, very exciting. And then the best part, no, this is perhaps maybe the best part. You get to keep your list. So like what I mean by this is on the socials, on all the social platforms, they own us. They own your friends. They own your connections. I mean, not literally, like obviously you're building those relationships offline too, but they own that hub of information. But on your email, you get those names for yourself. You get those individuals for yourself, and you can reach out to them on a one-to-one basis if you want. You can speak to specific people. So it's very, very malleable, I guess, in that it just gives us the reins as business owners. So I love email. Suffice it to say. All right, so 2 weeks ago, as I was like reflecting and basking in my love and appreciation for email as a way to market yourself off social media, after my ranting and raving about social media, I found myself in a little bit of a conundrum. Here's what happened. And some of you know the story, but stick around because I promise I'm going to make it even better for you. Well, I promise I'll try anyway. But here's what happened. I was sitting down, logging into my MailShrimp account, ready to write my little email friends my weekly email. And MailShrimp decided that for whatever reason, that was the day to lock Emily Aborn out and make her authenticate her account. Fine, no big deal. I have 2-factor authentication on. Usually that just means they would email me or they would send me like a text message or something to make myself prove that it was me. No big deal. This time, though, it actually required me to sign into my Authenticator app on my phone. Now, I use this app for my bank and Facebook and things like that. But in the Authenticator app, it was asking me to enter a password. Now, problem was, like usually I just use my face or like a PIN number on the Authenticator app, or like you have to match the 2 pins, but I didn't know this password. Like I was like, I don't know the password to this Authenticator app. Okay, if you're ready for like a truly deep, dark secret, this might be my truly deepest, darkest secret. Don't tell anyone. My friend Lindsay Masterson knows this because she literally was witness to it the other day when she was helping me sort this whole mess out. But I have a list of passwords and it's old school, okay? The list of passwords is written down. And yes, I have LastPass and like all that techie stuff too, but I just get nervous. So I have it written down. And I was looking on that list to try to see if that password for my authentication app was on it. It wasn't on that. It wasn't in my LastPass or OnePass or whatever I have. It was like not in the Notes app on my phone. It wasn't in the Notes app on my computer. I could not find this password. And I tried like, what would past Emily have used for a password? No, past Emily she was not communicating with present Emily. So I contacted MailShrimp support, which is, by the way, nearly impossible. And they wrote me back and said that the email I was emailing from was not the same one connected to my MailShrimp account. So they couldn't let me back in. And I was like, oh God. So I'm going to avoid getting too much in the weeds here because like a lot of this is technological and weedy. But rewinding back to circa 2018 when my domain first got set up. And I have no idea how the hell this happened. I know who set it up. I know what was going on, but I have no idea what they were doing or why this happened. But somehow I ended up with, let's call it split personalities, okay? And so I was the owner of Emily at emilyaborn.com as well as Emily at emily-aborn.com. Somehow I had both domains. I had emails for both domains. I had G Suites for both domains. And my logins, oh my God. If you looked at that list of passwords that I was just talking about, my logins are all over the place as far as like what's connected to what, which one's connected to which domain. It was a proper mess. And this has been going on, like I said, since 2018. So what are we in? 2023? That's 5 years. So MailChimp just so happened to be connected to the one with the dash where I was emailing from. But I couldn't log in to the email with the dash because I either didn't know my password, it just wasn't letting me in. So basically, MailChimp didn't believe me. They locked me out of my account. They then made me reply answering like 15 very complicated questions. Some of them are like, do you have an API key associated with your account? I'm like, what integrations do you have? I was like, spoiler, people, I have no idea what either of those things are. Like, no clue what an API key is. Do not know integrations, like no clue. But I did my best. So, some Googling and some responding. I did my best. They asked me like what the last actions were I took in my account, and I described them like to a T. I was like, and then I clicked this, and then I clicked this, and then I looked at my subscriber numbers, and then I did this, and then I did this. They asked me what my campaign templates look like. So I just like did it all like 100%. Like you could not have probably made that up. I don't know. If somebody was following me really, really closely, maybe they could have, but I did everything in as much detail as I could. Then they didn't tell me if I got the questions right or wrong. Like nobody replied to be like, yay, A+, you knew yourself. Nope. They did not tell me, but they did tell me that they were now giving the owner of the account, by the way, that's me, but they were giving the owner of the account 5 days to refute the transfer to the new email address. They would be cross-checking my answers. And if the owner of the account did not respond within 5 days, they would go ahead and change it to my email address, Emily at emilyaborn.com. I know you're kind of like, wow, my head is spinning. And honestly, mine was too. But here's the whole point of this. The whole point is like, I'm the owner. It's me. Like, please believe me. I am the one doing this. There is nobody else. There's only one of me. So it was like a whole thing. But anyway, after 5 days, I did get out of MailChimp jail and I got back in. And I was so excited. I emailed my list saying how much I loved them all. I never, ever wanted to email them so bad in my entire life. And I was just so delighted to be back, which was a true fact. So anyway, there is a point to this story. So actually there's a lot of points, but let's cover the bases. So one of the morals of this tale is just a simple reminder, like a simple reminder to download, back up, export your list if you have an email list, but also like other things too, like your website. Like I'm in the process of backing up my website because I'm just like, I'm in full on protection of my assets mode. So, put a little reminder in yourself, do it once a month. I'm going to start doing it once a month and saving it in a safe space. Secondly, you know what else this lesson taught me? It spurred me. It was a kick in the pants to create an opt-in or a freebie because I didn't have that prior to this. I just kind of kept putting it off. Like I couldn't really think of what I wanted to do. And then every time I would think of it, I would sit down and write it. And then I would like either give away the farm or be like, people don't want this. So, I must have created like 3 or 4 opt-ins and then just like not done them. I actually think one of them I even had an email sequence in place and then I just like deleted the entire thing. So this lesson spurred me on. It gave me some real fire under my batuka to create an opt-in or a freebie, which I did not have. My thought was the reason it did that for me is because I was thinking to myself, oh my God, like how will I ever rebuild this list? And there were other issues too. Like I had a list that I had backed up from maybe 2 years ago. But you gain new subscribers, but you also lose subscribers. And like, I wouldn't want to email that list and like to all the people that unsubscribe, be like, hi, I'm the annoying one that you like unsubscribe from. And here I am again, because I messed up and still have your email on file somehow. So anyway, I just was really trying to think of like, how am I going to rebuild this list if I can never get into my account again? So stay tuned actually on that opt-in, that freebie, because I want to share it with you next week. And it also correlates to next week's episode. So it kind of like, this process actually gave me my next big idea, let's call it. But here's another takeaway. And this is kind of like the point of today's episode. The minor little domain mess that happened in 2018, it was a ripple effect. It kept rippling out until it was this exponential domain disaster. And oh my God, if I really stop and think about it, all things my website have held this lesson for me. It began with that Emily Aborn and Emily-Aborn.com, and somehow like the split identities. I have no idea what was happening. It was 2 emails associated with like a lot of different accounts that I have. And also people would say to me, I have 2 emails for you. Which one do I send it to? For the record, I'm down to this email address being associated with just 2 things, GoDaddy and 23andMe, because thanks to Lindsay Masterson, once again, I spent all of Friday armed with the knowledge I needed on customer support, fixing all of these accounts in all of the other places. So she really was so helpful. Lindsay Masterson owns Cheetah Design Studio. It's a website. She's a website designer, and she is like a technical goddess. So, but there have been other things with my website over the past 4 years. So like, I think 1, 2, 3 website designs were either like done really half-assedly, and they flopped. Now, this is on me because I didn't pay for things to be done right from start to finish the first time. They weren't like DIY situations. I kind of brought people in with like parts and pieces. So there were three situations in which I was left with half a site or something that someone, in some cases, they didn't deliver on what they had promised. So there was that with my website. My website also had some weird glitch like happening where it was double publishing all of my content. So somehow I was ending up competing with myself online when it came to my hard working SEO efforts. Like, that's another story for another day, but I was literally competing against myself, and I was putting so much time and effort and energy into building my SEO strategy. So anyway, my website was kind of a disaster, and it kind of had been a disaster for an entire 5 years, along with that domain name. And like I said, I was also paying for the extra domain name. I was paying for the extra Google G Suite, like the whole 9 yards. So enough of the tech nonsense. Here's the lesson in the end of all this. Like, it pays to do it right the first time. Sometimes it pays to do it slowly. It almost always pays to hire a professional and not to cut corners in our businesses. That said, I have made a lot of fast decisions in my business, and I do believe in fast, inspired action, and sometimes it's been exactly what I needed. But sometimes when we just move fast, and especially if it's not, especially if it's not intentional or if it's not inspired, I think that sometimes it can actually end up being a delay because it was not done properly the first time. Or maybe it wasn't done by a person that actually knew what they were doing because we didn't take the time to make sure that they knew what they were doing. So I think that sometimes going too fast can create more problems than it solves. All right, let's talk about how this kind of like relates to our content and our marketing. I want to remind us that in our content and in our marketing, we are allowed, and sometimes it's exactly what we need to just like take a minute. Okay, just take a minute. A friend of mine, I'm going to give you some more examples, but a friend of mine recently got asked to speak and she agreed to it. She said yes. She was so excited to serve and like for the opportunity to present. And when they followed up with her, when the organization followed up with her about a week prior to the speaking engagement, they informed her that they wanted her to use a very specific slide deck that they had created and speak to these laid out bullet points that they had put in place. So now you can see how this is no longer her talk. It is her giving their talk, which is not at all what she thought she was signing up for. And so, in sharing the story with me, she said that she wished she had just taken a minute, asked a few more questions about the opportunity prior to saying yes, because it probably was something that she wouldn't have agreed to had she had all the information. So that's another lesson. Like if you need to take a minute, it can be a great spot for you to take a minute to ask more questions. Like sometimes we just need more information before taking that next step. Another lady recently came to me in a super duper rush. Now, for the record, I do not believe in copywriting emergencies. There are not typically copywriting emergencies, okay? But this actually was kind of an emergency. She was an interior designer. And she had come to her web designer with copy. Now, this copy had been written by her coach. And I'm sure that the coach is a fine writer. I'm sure she's a wonderful writer. But this was not written for a website. And it had like no keywords. It was actually just, honestly, it had no calls to action. It was just pretty like awful. And it was just not laid out like how copy should be for a website. So her web designer, who was flabbergasted, she got this and she was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do. So she was supposed to be like implementing this copy, right? And she reaches out to me and said, Emily, this is legitimately an SOS. Can you help us out? So I am actually like kind of up to my eyeballs a little bit with copywriting projects right now, but I did really want to help. I collaborate a lot with this person. And so I said yes. And I'm glad I did because we are getting her ship shape and it's looking really, really good. But again, she ended up kind of spending double the time, double the money, and probably a lot of headache and a lot of stress and a lot of worry simply because she didn't take time at that beginning to hire the person to do it the first time, and maybe not to ask the right questions. Okay, I have two more little stories for you. I think just two more. We'll see where we go. I went to a local organization last week to see about volunteering. They are someone that we really love and support, and they have opportunities to do things on like hiking trails locally as far as like cleanup and maintenance, and also participate in events. And I really want to get involved and help and be a part of it. So last week I met with two of the women responsible for organizing like all the activities and the volunteers, and they threw out a date at me for their upcoming event. And they were like, Emily, we would love your help like organizing this event. Now, old Emily would have just said yes in that instant. But current Emily was smart. She's smarter. She took a step back and she like thought about that entire week. I know things that I'm already committed to that week. I also happen to know that it's like the week of my anniversary. I knew that I had stuff happening that weekend and the week prior. And I kind of was looking at it. I'm like, I actually think that this is too much for me to take on. So in my brain, I'm like quickly going through and asking myself the right questions to understand how much it would be for me. Then I asked them some more questions, like how much of a time commitment it would be leading up to it, how much time the day was, how much time was involved on the day of, all of those kind of things. What time did I need to be there? That kind of thing. And so then I was confidently and safely able to give accurate information, like I'm just actually not available on that date, but I definitely want to be part of other things and opportunities to help and volunteer. So please keep me in the loop. But I have to say that taking a pause in that moment instead of just saying yes, and I'll tell you what, saying yes super fast, like being like, yes, let's do it. It feels good. It feels good to my dopamine in my brain. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I just said yes to doing something and it's so exciting and I'm going to do it. It's on my calendar. And it also feels really good to say yes to the person on the other side, because you know that like you're making them happy, right? Like you're taking something off of their plate and it can feel really, really good. But when you think about those quick yeses, sometimes they become really long, slow, resentful no's. So I love this concept of just being able to take some time, pause, pull back and say like, is this something I can actually commit to right now? Is this something I can actually fit into my life? And am I going to be able to follow through? Because I am the kind of person, and I think a lot of you are too, when I say yes, I want to be 100% in. And so I have to make sure, like something I'm really, really working on in my life right now is when I say yes, I want to make sure that I have the time, the space, and probably a little bit of the emotional energy too for what I'm giving. Okay, truly last story. On the same day that my MailShrimp went kaput and like exploded and locked me out, I went to a networking event hosted by Kim Dawson, which was super lovely and super fun. And as I was sitting there, I was talking to a website designer and an email tech fairy is what she calls herself, about how we see clients come to us often who want to cut corners and don't want to take time to do things properly from the get-go. But what happens is it ends up leaving them with a huge mess. The website designer was sharing how, she sees this on a copy and branding perspective. So people will come to her, want the website. They're like, yes, I have the copy. I have the branding. And it's just like not at all ready to go. And the email tech fairy was saying she sees disasters behind the scenes with people's email marketing where they just set things up haphazardly, either didn't know what they were doing or were just like moving too fast or, took action without thinking of like the repercussions. And I had to raise my hand too, because like I told you at the beginning, that has been me. I have taken that fast action. I have decided to DIY things when I really should have gotten help on it. And sometimes it served me and I've learned how to do something new and it's been a wonderful experience. And sometimes it has left a huge disaster for somebody else to clean up. And just one more little thing that like came out of me sharing these stories with this, the web designer specifically, she and I were like, oh my gosh, we should like write an article about this. So we both did. We wrote blogs for each other on each other's websites about why it is so important to have copy and website at the same time, go hand in hand. So I'm going to include a link to that blog in the show notes as well. But here's a reminder for all of us this week, whether it's just your business in general, whether it's your life, whether it's your marketing. Like I said, I am all about fast action and I'm all about doing things scared. I'm all about doing things before I'm ready, doing it before you can hire yourself because I hire somebody else because I don't want that to hold you back. And I also think that when we take time to ask the right questions, hire the pros, hire the right people, get the knowledge that we need from the get-go, we end up saving ourselves so much time, so much energy, so much money, miscommunication, resentment, headache, and in my case, a lot of misery sitting on hold with a lot of customer service people on a Friday afternoon. And I think just another way that this all relates is it kind of relates to some of these like AI tools. And I'm going to pick on ChatGPT just because it's the one that pops to mind. But I think that a lot of us are like, oh, this is such a quick remedy. Like it's a shortcut. But there is no quick remedy. There is no shortcut. There is no copy and pastable formula for your content and for your marketing. Like the only copy and pastable formula is being yourself, but it is a slow, deliberate, long game. It is a long-term game, and it's okay to take it at your own pace. Like take as much time as you need to ensure that you're doing it the way that you want to, intentionally, your way, in a way that feels really, really good and also really, really fulfilling for you. So it's like your way of doing it. There's a naval phrase or sailing. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know the difference, honestly, but it goes slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And what they mean by that is when you are taking your time not rushing, and not focusing on the wrong things or distracting yourself or trying to multitask. Like, it is really truly a matter of being a little bit more deliberate in your action. So all this, one more little like note on this. I don't want you to be getting in your own way and procrastinating. And I don't want you to be like, oh, Emily says everything has to be perfect. No, that is not what I'm saying. I don't want you to like hold back and not do things. And I also don't want to see you cutting corners and being left with messes to clean up down the road. So all I ask is that you kind of check in with yourself and sort of like make sure that the action steps you're taking are deliberate and intentional. You don't have to say yes to all the things. It feels good in the moment, but it doesn't feel good all the time long term. So make sure you're saying yes to the right things for you, that you are in the right places for you. Like, we all get to say no. And when you start exercising that muscle, it is a beautiful, wonderful thing. But you can also say, I need a minute. Let me think about that before you say yes. Sometimes when we cut corners or we say yes to something too fast, it can cause us a lot of problems down the road. So my slow action step for you, and actually like my slow action step for myself too, is looking at where in my life I need to pause before moving forward and saying yes. And there's something right now where I'm like, ooh, I could create this thing, but I actually think I need to sit with the pause. I think I need to sit with the feeling and looking at all of the ways that it could go before I create it. So for you, maybe there is something you need to look at where you actually need to just take one little pause before moving forward and saying yes. Maybe you're finding yourself saying yes to just too many things, or maybe you're not taking fast enough action and you're not saying yes to anything out of a place of fear or out of a place of not having enough information. I don't want to see that happen to you either. So there is areas in our life where we need both. We need slow, and we also need to take some fast, like inspired action and just move a little bit quicker. So I would just encourage you to think about like where those areas are in your life or in your business. Maybe there's someplace you've been cutting corners or trying to take a shortcut or the easy, fast way. And you're realizing that has actually just made you more stuck and go slower in the long run. So where can you kind of like ease back on that? Recently, I made a pretty large shift in one of my businesses, and it likely to a lot of people looked very fast. However, making the change that I made was actually a very, very slow, long, intentional process. It did not happen for me overnight. It was something that I had been thinking and feeling about for a very, very long time. What was not slow and intentional was actually how I started it in the first place and how I went about it in the beginning, which is fine. Like, here's the thing. I see huge, huge gifts for myself in taking that fast action from the get-go and having no idea where it was going to go and just like trying it and seeing where it went. And I actually think where I went wrong is never taking that time to slow down and say, you know what, I am going to give this a direction. I am going to choose what I want this to look like. So over time, that was not sustainable for me in the long term. And I think that at some point, I really got lost in what I was doing along the way. And so that's where now I'm making this change and I'm sitting with this pause and saying, okay, what would it look like for the next iteration of what I create to be a little bit more slow and intentional, especially learning all that I had. Like, here's the other thing. Someone responded to my story about MailShrimp and had said, well, the only way we learn is by making mistakes. And I was like, yes. And now I want you to learn from my mistake so you don't have to make it for yourself. And I think that it is true. We do learn from our mistakes. We learn when we go slow, and we also learn when we go too fast. So sometimes you do truly just have to learn the hard way, but I think that that's where I'm looking at this as a reflection opportunity. Like, there are areas in our lives where we're dragging our feet and kicking the can down the road. And it's like, you just got to do something. And then there are areas where we probably could use a little bit of a pause and some intention before moving forward. Okay. That's all I got. If you could use an extra set of eyeballs on something in your own business and your own marketing, and you're kind of like, I could really use help figuring out where I might need to take fast action, or where I need to actually sit down and have a strategy in place and map out some of these steps to go forward, I would love to be your person to help with that. I'm really good at taking a bird's eye view, and I can help you kind of weigh out these decisions and like, where might you just need to try something and take action in your marketing. I love helping people do that. So if you're like, oh, that sounds like exactly what I need, I offer a strategy session, and it's a pretty inexpensive way to get started with me. So I put a link to that in the show notes as well. People, we have a lot of fun in these strategy sessions. And what I think I most love about it is that it's like 90 minutes just focused on you and your business goals. And we don't always get that with people in our businesses. You know, we don't always get just like concentrated, focused time to work on our businesses. So after we meet, I always give people follow-up, like, call it homework, if you will. And also like whatever resources we talked about, whatever resources I can think of, whatever ones I have at my disposal to help you get back on track and take that action, take that intentional next right step at whatever pace feels good for you to move forward. Whew. Okay. That was a lot, and it was fun. I told you it was a lot of stories. I told you it was some horror stories, but I did tell you that there was a happy ending, and I feel that I truly delivered on my promise. Okay, next week I am going to chat with you again, and we're going to be talking about something really fun. It's how to talk about yourself. We're going to go over how to share about yourself in a one-to-one or networking setting. Also, like a little bit on your about page and maybe what that might look like. Is your about page really about you? That's the question. And we're also going to talk about how to share about yourself on LinkedIn and beyond. And furthermore, why it is so important to do so. So I will talk to you next week, and you know where to find me in the meantime. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com, and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.